The elevator doors sealed shut with a hollow clunk, trapping two strangers between floors in a moment that would shatter everything they thought they knew about success and survival. He was Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO whose name alone could move markets, a single father who controlled empires but couldn't control the metal box now holding him prisoner. She was nobody's priority, just another applicant with worn shoes and a thin folder, invisible to systems designed to filter out people exactly like her. Neither knew that this malfunction would become the most valuable moment of their lives. If you stay until the end, drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's begin. The morning started like every other morning in Ethan Cole's meticulously constructed life, with precision, control, and the absolute certainty that every second had been accounted for. He stood in his penthouse bathroom at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes ahead of schedule, watching the city awaken below through floor-to-ceiling windows that cost more than most people's homes. The skyline glittered with ambition, each building a testament to someone's dream, someone's empire. His own tower stood tallest among them, a steel and glass monument to 20 years of calculated risks and ruthless efficiency. Ethan adjusted his tie, charcoal gray, silk, nodded with the kind of perfection that came from muscle memory rather than thought. His reflection stared back at him, sharp jaw, eyes that had learned to reveal nothing, hair touched with distinguished silver at the temples despite being only 42. He looked like success was supposed to look, felt like it too, most days. The reflection didn't show the exhaustion. "Daddy?" A small voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to find his daughter, Sophie, standing in the doorway clutching her stuffed rabbit. She was 7 years old, dark hair tangled from sleep, wearing the princess pajamas she'd insisted on despite his suggestion that she was getting too old for them. In her eyes, he saw the question she asked every morning without words. "Are you leaving again?" "Morning, sweetheart." He crouched down to her level, something the business magazines would never photograph. The billionaire CEO on his knees before the one person whose opinion actually mattered. "Did you sleep okay?" Sophie nodded, but her grip on the rabbit tightened. "Mrs. Patterson says you have another late meeting tonight." Mrs. Patterson, the nanny, the third one this year, because the first two couldn't handle Sophie's nightmares, the ones that started after her mother walked out 18 months ago without looking back. Walked out on both of them, actually, though Ethan had stopped being surprised by betrayal years before that. "I'll try to be home for dinner," he said, knowing even as the words left his mouth that they were probably a lie. The merger with Tecton Industries had been 6 months in the making. Today was the final presentation, the moment where he'd either secure his company's dominance for the next decade or watch competitors swoop in like vultures. Missing it wasn't an option. Sophie's face did that thing children's faces do when they're learning not to hope too hard. It broke something in him every time. "I'll be home," he said more firmly, making a promise he had no idea how to keep. "I promise." She smiled then, small and tentative, and threw her arms around his neck. He held her for exactly 15 seconds, long enough to mean it, short enough to stay on schedule, before kissing her forehead and standing. "Mrs. Patterson will make you breakfast. Be good at school." "I'm always good," Sophie said, with the kind of earnestness that made him wonder what he'd done to deserve her. By 6:32 a.m., Ethan was in his car, a black Mercedes that had been detailed the night before, being driven toward his office by Marcus, who'd been his driver for 8 years and knew better than to attempt conversation. The city slid past the tinted windows, coffee shops opening, street vendors setting up, early joggers pounding pavement with the determination of people trying to outrun their own limitations. Ethan's phone buzzed constantly. His assistant, Miranda, had already sent the morning briefing. 17 emails requiring immediate attention, 4 calls he needed to return before 9 a.m., a reminder that the Tecton presentation was at 2 p.m. and could not, under any circumstances, be rescheduled or delayed. He scrolled through the emails with practiced efficiency, firing off responses that were brief to the point of terseness. His leadership style had been described in business journals as demanding, exacting, and once, memorably, frighteningly precise. He preferred to think of it as simply refusing to accept mediocrity. The car pulled up to Cole Industries headquarters at 7:04 a.m. The building rose 47 stories above the financial district, its facade a study in modern architecture, all clean lines and reflective glass that threw the city's image back at itself. The lobby alone had cost $12 million to renovate, every detail curated to send a message. We are untouchable. We are inevitable. Ethan strode through the entrance, nodding curtly to the security guard whose name he'd never learned. The morning shift was just arriving, junior executives, administrative staff, the machinery that kept the empire running. They parted for him automatically, some mumbling greetings he didn't acknowledge, others simply averting their eyes as if his presence was too bright to look at directly. He'd cultivated that distance deliberately. Familiarity bred complacency. Respect came from maintaining clear boundaries between leadership and everyone else. The elevator bank stood ahead, 6 elevators servicing the tower's 47 floors. The middle one, his elevator, though no formal designation existed, stood waiting, doors open like a mouth ready to swallow him into another day of controlled chaos. Ethan stepped inside and pressed 43. The executive floor. His floor. The doors began to slide shut. "Wait! Hold it, please!" The voice came from outside, breathless and desperate. Ethan's hand moved toward the door close button out of pure instinct. He didn't have time for delays. But some deeper reflex, perhaps the same one that made him crouch for his daughter's hugs, made him press door open instead. A young woman stumbled into the elevator, nearly dropping the thin folder she clutched against her chest. "Thank you," she gasped, pressing herself against the opposite wall as if trying to take up as little space as possible. "Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I thought I'd miss it." "What floor?" Ethan's voice came out clipped, professional, already dismissing her. 7, please." She was still catching her breath, one hand pressed to her chest. "The HR department. I have an interview at 7:30, and the subway was delayed, and I just—" She stopped herself, seeming to realize she was explaining her life to a stranger who hadn't asked. 7? Just 7. Please." He pressed the button without comment and stepped back to his corner of the elevator, pulling out his phone to make it clear he had no interest in conversation. The elevator began its ascent with a soft mechanical hum. Ethan glanced at the woman from the corner of his eye, the kind of quick assessment he'd trained himself to make in boardrooms and negotiations. Early 20s, maybe 25 at most. Clothes that had been chosen with care but showed their age. The skirt had been hemmed inexpertly, the blouse pressed but slightly faded from too many washings. Shoes that were professional but scuffed at the toes. The folder she held was one of those cheap manila ones from a drugstore, edges already softening. Everything about her screamed trying too hard with too little. Her hair had been pulled back into what was probably meant to be a neat bun, but strands had escaped during her sprint to catch the elevator, framing a face that was younger than her eyes suggested. Those eyes, dark, wide, carrying the kind of exhaustion that came from chronic stress rather than just one late night, stared at the floor numbers as they climbed. 3rd floor, 4th floor. She shifted her weight, and Ethan noticed her hands trembling slightly where they gripped the folder. Nerves, obviously. The interview. Some entry-level position, probably, given that she was heading to HR on the 7th floor, rather than the executive suites above. He returned his attention to his phone, dismissing her from his thoughts as thoroughly as he'd dismissed the security guard, the junior executives, every other person who existed at the periphery of his carefully controlled world. The elevator passed the 5th floor, then it shuddered. The movement was subtle at first, just a slight hiccup in the smooth ascent, the kind of thing that might have been imagination. But then it happened again, more pronounced this time, accompanied by a grinding sound that vibrated through the metal walls. Ethan looked up from his phone. The woman's eyes had gone wide, her knuckles white where she gripped the handrail that ran along the elevator's interior. "That's normal, right?" Her voice was tight with forced calm. "That sound? That's normal?" Before Ethan could answer, not that he had an answer, the elevator jolted hard enough to knock them both off balance. The lights flickered once, twice, then settled into an eerie dimness as the emergency lighting kicked in. And then everything stopped. The hum of motion ceased. The floor numbers froze between 5 and 6, the display flickering uncertainly. The absolute silence that followed was somehow louder than any alarm could have been. They were stuck. Ethan stared at the control panel as if his gaze alone could force the machinery back into submission. His mind immediately began calculating. How long for building maintenance to respond? How quickly they could be extracted? What meetings would be delayed? How this would cascade through his precisely planned day? The Tecton presentation was in 6 hours and 47 minutes. That was still manageable. Uncomfortable, inconvenient, but manageable. He pressed the alarm button. A shrill bell echoed through the elevator shaft, then cut off, leaving them in silence again. He pressed it again. Same result. "Is it working?" the woman asked. Her voice had gone quiet, controlled in a way that suggested she was forcing it to be. "No." Ethan pulled out his phone. No signal. Of course. Elevator shafts were notorious dead zones. He looked at her. "Do you have a phone?" She nodded quickly, pulling a battered smartphone from her purse. One of those models from 3 generations ago, screen protector cracked at the corner. Her hand shook as she checked it. Nothing. No bars. Ethan moved to the emergency call box, lifting the receiver. Static crackled through the line, then nothing. Dead. He replaced it with more force than necessary, the plastic clattering against the metal housing. "Okay," he said, more to himself than to her. "Okay. Building maintenance monitors all elevators. The system will have registered the malfunction. Someone will respond soon." How soon? The woman had slid down to sit on the floor, her folder still clutched to her chest, knees pulled up. She looked very small suddenly, very young. "I don't know." Ethan checked his watch. 7:11 a.m. Could be minutes, could be longer. "I have an interview at 7:30. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "I took 2 buses and the subway to get here. If I miss this—" She stopped, pressing her lips together as if physically holding back the words. "Never mind, it's fine. It'll be fine." It was clearly not fine, but Ethan had spent 20 years learning not to absorb other people's problems, so he simply nodded and returned to examining the control panel, looking for something, anything, that might give them control over the situation. There was nothing. Minutes crawled past. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the elevator's interior, turning the small space into something that felt progressively smaller. The air, which had seemed perfectly adequate when they were moving, now felt close, warm, stale. Ethan loosened his tie, just slightly. The woman, girl, really, he'd decided, though something about the weight in her eyes suggested she'd earned the right to be called a woman. Had her head tilted back against the wall, eyes closed, breathing deliberately slow. "Are you claustrophobic?" he asked, more out of practical concern than sympathy. The last thing he needed was her panicking, hyperventilating, making the situation even more complicated. Her eyes opened. "No, just—" she gestured vaguely, trying to stay calm. "You're doing well." The words came out before he could consider whether they were appropriate. Something about the forced steadiness in her expression made him remember Sophie's face when she tried to be brave about things that scared her. A small, bitter smile crossed the woman's face. Practice. Practice staying calm in stuck elevators. Practice dealing with things going wrong. She said it matter-of-factly. No self-pity, just stating a fact about her life. You get good at it after a while. Ethan found himself studying her again, this time with curiosity rather than dismissal. "The interview," he heard himself say. "What position?" "Administrative assistant, in the finance department." She glanced down at her folder. "It's not, I know it's not impressive or anything, but it's steady. Benefits. That's what matters." "You don't sound particularly excited about it." She looked up at him, and for a moment something sharp flickered in those tired eyes. "I'm excited about being able to pay rent." Does that count? The directness of it caught him off guard. In his world, people wrapped their desperation in ambition, dressed neat up as aspiration. No one simply said, "I need money to survive." "I didn't mean—" he started. "I know." She cut him off, but gently. "Sorry, I'm just— it's been a long few months. Job hunting when you're broke is basically a full-time job that doesn't pay anything. And every interview that doesn't work out feels like—" She stopped herself again, shaking her head. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear about my problems." We're trapped in an elevator. Ethan surprised himself by sliding down to sit on the floor across from her, something he couldn't remember doing in a public space since ever. "Neither of us is going anywhere?" She laughed at that. A real laugh, startled and genuine. Fair point. Silence settled again, but it felt different now. Less hostile, just two people stuck together, waiting. What company is the interview with? Ethan asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear her say it. Coal Industries? She gestured vaguely upward. This building, actually. I've applied here before, but I never heard back. This time I got called in, though, so... She shrugged. Maybe third time's the charm. Third time. Meaning she'd applied at least twice before and been rejected, or more likely, filtered out by the automated system that screened thousands of applications. Ethan had approved that system himself 3 years ago. Efficient. Effective. Saved the HR department countless hours by eliminating unqualified candidates before human eyes ever saw them. Saved time by making people like the woman across from him invisible. What do you know about the company? He kept his voice neutral, curious what the view looked like from outside the tower. She considered the question carefully, as if it might be a test. It's one of the biggest tech consultancy firms in the city. Solid reputation, good benefits from what I've heard, growth potential. She paused. Honestly, it feels kind of, I don't know, impersonal. Like, I've read everything I can find about coal industries, and it's all very impressive, but there's no... She struggled for the word. There's no face to it, no sense of who's actually making the decisions. It's just this big, efficient machine. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. And that bothers you? Not bothers exactly. She pulled her knees closer. It's just hard to get excited about being a small cog in a machine that doesn't really care if you're there or not. But like I said, rent, bills, reality. Another of those small, sad smiles. Beggars can't be choosers. The phrase hung in the air between them. Beggars can't be choosers. She'd just described his company, his life's work, as something people settled for out of desperation rather than desire. And the worst part was, she was right. When had that happened? When had Coal Industries transformed from his vision, a company that solved real problems that made a difference, into just another corporate entity people endured for a paycheck? You don't agree with that, the woman said, watching his face. The beggars and choosers thing. I can see it in your expression. I just think you're selling yourself short. The words came out rougher than he intended. If you're talented, if you're capable, you shouldn't have to beg for anything. You should have options. Should. She repeated the word like it was foreign. That's a nice word. Should. In a perfect world, sure. But in this world? She gestured around the stopped elevator. Sometimes you take what you can get and hope it's enough. Her phone buzzed suddenly, startling them both. She grabbed it, hope flashing across her face, then dying just as quickly. Text came through before we lost signal completely. My roommate, asking if I'm okay. She typed out a quick response, hit send, then stared at the failed to send message. Great. People will be worried about you? Ethan asked. My roommate, probably. My little brother. Something softened in her expression at the mention of her brother. He's 14. Smart kid. Smarter than me, definitely. He's got a scholarship to a good high school, which is amazing, but the extras, textbooks, lab fees, all the stuff the scholarship doesn't cover. That's why I need this job to work out. She caught herself. Sorry. Again, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Because we're stuck in an elevator and there's nothing else to do, Ethan said. But that wasn't quite true. There was something about her openness, the way she spoke about her struggles without making them a performance, that made him want to keep listening. Your brother, you're putting him through school? Our parents died 3 years ago. Car accident. She said it the way people speak about old wounds, painful still, but scarred over enough to handle. He was 11, I was 22. Suddenly I was his guardian, his parent, everything. And I was working retail making barely enough for my own studio apartment, so... She shrugged. You figure it out. You have to. Ethan thought about Sophie, about how desperately he tried to give her stability, security, everything he'd never had growing up. The difference was, he had resources, money, power. This woman had nothing but determination and was somehow still fighting. That's why the interview matters, he said quietly. That's why the interview matters, she confirmed. Administrative assistant pays $42,000 a year. That's $14,000 more than I'm making now. That's the difference between scraping by and actually having savings. Between my brother going to college someday or not. Her voice roughened. So, yeah, I really need to not screw this up. Ethan checked his watch. 7:34 a.m. Her interview had already started without her. He wondered if whoever was supposed to meet with her would wait, or if they'd mark her as a no-show and move on to the next candidate. Probably the latter. Efficiency above all else. That was his policy, after all. They'll understand, he found himself saying, though he wasn't sure they would, when you explain what happened. Will they? She didn't sound convinced. I mean, I know it's not my fault, but there's always someone else, right? Someone who showed up on time, who didn't have an excuse. And most places, they don't really care about your reasons. They just care about results. She was describing his own philosophy back to him, the worldview he'd built his empire on. Results matter. Excuses don't. It sounded different coming from the other side. More minutes passed. The elevator remained stubbornly still. Ethan sent up a mental calculation of what this delay was costing him. Not in money, but in momentum, in the delicate timing of a day that had been choreographed down to the minute. The woman, he still didn't know her name, had gone quiet, staring at her folder. He could see her lips moving slightly, practicing something. Interview answers probably. Preparing for a meeting she was currently missing. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. She looked up, surprised. "Maya. Maya Santos. I know who you are." She said it gently, almost apologetically. "I mean, I didn't recognize you at first, but your watch." She nodded at his wrist. "Patek Philippe. Custom made from what I can see. And the suit is bespoke, probably Savile Row. Plus you pressed 43, which is the executive floor. And you have this..." She gestured vaguely at him. "Presence. Like you're used to people doing what you want." A pause. "You're Ethan Cole." The recognition settled over the moment like a frost. The easy conversation they'd been having suddenly felt different, weighted with the knowledge of who he was, what he represented. "Does that change things?" he asked, curious about her answer. Maya considered it seriously. "I don't know, does it?" "It shouldn't." "But it does." She said it without accusation. "You own the company I'm trying to work for. You probably have 1,000 meetings more important than being stuck here. And I'm just..." She stopped. "Just what?" "Nobody." The word came out flat. "One of thousands of applicants, completely replaceable." "Nobody's completely replaceable," Ethan said. But even as he spoke, he knew it was a lie. He'd built his company on the principle of efficiency, of systems that could function regardless of individual personnel. How many employees had he lost over the years without the company missing a beat? "That's a nice thing to say." Maya's smile was sad. "But we both know it's not true. Not really. The machine keeps running no matter who's in it." There was that word again. Machine. His company. His life's work. Reduced to mechanical inevitability. The elevator shuddered suddenly, a deep groaning vibration that rattled through the walls. Both of them tensed. For a moment, Ethan thought they might be moving again, but the shudder faded and everything went still once more. "How long do you think we'll be stuck?" Maya's voice had tightened again. "I don't know." Ethan checked his phone again. Still no signal. 7:52 a.m. now. The Tecton meeting was in 6 hours, still time, but the window was closing. Building maintenance should have noticed by now. Emergency protocols should be in effect. "Should," Maya echoed his earlier word. There's that word again. Despite everything, he smiled. Fair point. They fell into silence again. Ethan found his mind wandering to Sophie, to the promise he'd made at breakfast. "I'll be home for dinner." That was looking increasingly unlikely, even if they got out of here in the next few minutes. The day was already derailed, his schedule in chaos. "Can I ask you something?" Maya's voice broke through his thoughts. "Sure." "Why did you hold the elevator door when I was running late?" She was watching him carefully. "You were about to let it close. I saw your hand move toward the button, but then you didn't." Ethan thought about it. Why had he opened the door? Habit? Impulse? Some vestige of basic human decency that hadn't been completely optimized out of him? "I don't know," he admitted. Maybe I was having a good morning. Were you? The question was more complicated than it should have been. My daughter hugged me before I left for work, so yes, I suppose I was. You have a daughter. Maya's expression softened. How old? 7, Sophie. Saying her name made something in his chest tighten. She'd be at school now if Mrs. Patterson had gotten her there on time. Probably sitting in her classroom, doodling in the margins of her workbook instead of paying attention. She took after him in that way, always thinking about something other than what she was supposed to be thinking about. That must be hard, Maya said quietly. Balancing everything, being a parent and running a company. It's impossible, Ethan said, the admission escaping before he could stop it. Every day I have to choose between being a good father and being a good CEO. And I never feel like I'm succeeding at either one. But you try. It wasn't a question. That counts for something. Does it? He heard his own bitterness. When you're constantly disappointing the one person who should be able to count on you. You made her a promise this morning, Maya said, about dinner. That's why you keep checking your watch. You're trying to figure out if you can still keep it. She was more perceptive than he'd given her credit for. I'm trying to figure out a lot of things. Here's what I know about being a parent, Maya said, her voice taking on a different quality, older, wearier. You're going to break some promises. That's just reality. But if you keep trying, if you keep showing up even when you mess up, that matters more than perfection. You sound like you have experience with this. With my brother, yeah. I'm not his parent, but close enough. She smiled slightly. He doesn't care that our apartment is small or that sometimes we eat ramen for dinner 3 nights in a row. He cares that I show up to his school events, that I help with his homework even when I'm exhausted, that I remember what he tells me about his friends, his teachers, his life. She paused. Your daughter probably doesn't care about the size of your house or the importance of your meetings. She cares if you remember the stuffed rabbit. What? This morning, before you left. I'm guessing your daughter was holding a stuffed animal, probably a rabbit, based on the trace of gray-white fur on your right sleeve, just below the elbow. That's about where a 7-year-old's head would reach when you crouch down to hug her. Maya gestured toward his arm. The fur is synthetic, likely from a well-loved toy, which means you noticed it. You hugged her low enough for the rabbit to press against you. That's not the action of someone who doesn't care. Ethan stared at her, then at his sleeve where, yes, a few strands of gray-white synthetic fur clung to the charcoal fabric. He'd hugged Sophie while she was holding Mr. Hoppy. He'd even knelt down for it, something he didn't have to do but always did because it made her smile. You have a good eye for detail, he said finally. I have a good eye for people. Maya shrugged. Comes from years of watching, waiting, trying to figure out what people want so I can give it to them. Job interviews, customer service, life. She looked down at her folder. For all the good it does me. It got you an interview. An interview I'm currently missing. But she said it without heat. Story of my life, honestly. Almost, but not quite. So close you can taste it, then something goes wrong. Like elevator malfunctions. Like everything. She leaned her head back against the wall. 3 years ago, I almost got into law school. Full ride scholarship. Then my parents died and I had to drop out of undergrad to take care of my brother. 2 years ago, I almost got promoted to management at the store where I worked. Then the company downsized and eliminated the position. 6 months ago, I almost... She stopped. Never mind. It doesn't matter. What happened 6 months ago? Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I met someone. A good guy. Kind. Patient. He said he understood about my brother, about my situation. For a while, I thought maybe I could have something good, you know? Not just survival, but actual happiness. She closed her eyes. Then he got a job offer in another city. Asked me to come with him, and I couldn't because of my brother, because of responsibilities, because life. Did he wait? For about a month? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I don't blame him. Why would anyone wait for someone who can't give them anything but complications? Ethan thought about his ex-wife, about how she'd described their marriage as death by 1,000 responsibilities, about how she'd said he loved his company more than her, loved his work more than their family, about how she'd been right. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be. I'm not." Maya opened her eyes. "I made my choice. My brother needed me more than I needed a relationship. That's just how it is." The way she said it, pragmatic, resigned, without self-pity, reminded him of himself in some strange way. Different circumstances, vastly different resources, but the same fundamental calculation. What am I willing to sacrifice to protect what matters most? For her, it was everything. Every dream, every chance at happiness, every possibility of a different life. For him, what had he sacrificed? His marriage, time with his daughter, the vision he'd once had of building something meaningful rather than just profitable. They'd both given up so much. The difference was, he'd gotten power in return. She'd gotten nothing but more struggle. "The company," he heard himself say. "Coal Industries. When you said it feels impersonal, that it's just a machine, you're right." Maya looked at him in surprise. "It wasn't always like that," he continued. "When I started the company, it was about solving problems. Real problems. I wanted to build something that mattered, that made a difference. But somewhere along the way," he gestured vaguely, "growth became the goal instead of the means. Efficiency replaced purpose. And now it's exactly what you said. A machine. One that works perfectly, but doesn't actually stand for anything." "You could change that," Maya said. "Couldn't you?" "Could I?" Ethan shook his head. "The machine has momentum. Shareholders, boards of directors, quarterly reports. Thousands of employees depending on stability. You don't just change course on something that big." "Why not?" The question was simple, direct. "If you built it, you can rebuild it. Can't you?" Before he could answer, the elevator lurched violently. The emergency lights flickered, plunging them into complete darkness for a heart-stopping second before stuttering back to life. Maya made a small, frightened sound. "It's okay," Ethan said, surprising himself by moving across the elevator to sit beside her. Not touching, but close enough that she wouldn't feel alone. "The emergency systems are designed to handle this." "Are they working?" Her voice shook slightly. "They're keeping the lights on. That's something." They sat in silence, both acutely aware of how fragile their situation was. Suspended between floors in a metal box, dependent on systems that had already failed once. "I should tell you something," Maya said quietly. "About those applications to Coal Industries. The ones I sent before. You don't have to. I want to." She turned to look at him in the dim light. "The first time I applied, I was honest. Said I needed the job to support my brother, that I didn't have traditional qualifications, but I was a hard worker. I thought honesty mattered." She laughed bitterly. "Automated rejection in 3 days. Thank you for your interest. And the second time? I lied. Made up internships I never had, stretched my retail experience into customer success management, acted like I'd been groomed for corporate life instead of just trying to survive it." She paused. "That one took 5 days to reject." Ethan felt something twist in his gut. He'd approved those automated systems, celebrated their efficiency. "This time," Maya continued, "I didn't apply. A friend who works in your mailroom saw the posting, knew I needed work, and handed my resume directly to someone in HR. Bypassed the system entirely. That's the only reason I got an interview." "The system failed you," Ethan said. "The system worked exactly as designed," Maya corrected. "It filtered out people like me. People without the right credentials, the right background, the right... whatever it is that makes someone look good on paper." She met his eyes. "And now I'm sitting here with the person who designed that system, trapped in an elevator, missing the one chance I had to prove I'm more than what shows up on a resume." The irony wasn't lost on him. Neither was the truth of what she was saying. How many Maya Santoses had his systems filtered out? How many capable, determined, resilient people had never made it past the algorithms because they didn't fit the profile of what success was supposed to look like? "I'm sorry," he said. The words felt inadequate. "Don't apologize." Maya's voice was firm. "You built something efficient. That's what companies need. I'm just..." She sighed. "I'm just one of the casualties of efficiency." They sat in the growing silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Ethan's mind was racing, recalculating everything he thought he knew about his company, his leadership, his legacy. 8:23 a.m. The Tecton meeting was in 5 hours and 37 minutes. Somehow, that felt less important than it had an hour ago. The elevator groaned again, a deep mechanical sound that vibrated through their bones. Then, without warning, it shuddered and began to move. Both of them scrambled to their feet. The numbers on the display flickered to life. 5, 6, 7. The elevator slowed, stopped smoothly, and the doors slid open onto the 7th floor. Maya grabbed her folder, moving toward the exit, then paused and turned back. Thank you for the conversation, She searched for words. For seeing me, even if it doesn't matter. It matters, Ethan said, and meant it. She smiled, sad, resigned, already preparing herself for disappointment, and stepped out of the elevator. The doors began to close. Ethan stared at them, his hand hovering over the control panel. Every rational thought told him to let her go, to head to his office, to salvage what he could of the day. But something Maya had said kept echoing in his mind. If you built it, you can rebuild it. And suddenly, he understood. The most important meeting of his day wasn't happening at 2 p.m. with Tecton Industries. It was happening right now, on the 7th floor, with a woman who'd been invisible to his systems but was more real than any spreadsheet or quarterly report. Ethan pressed the door open button. Maya turned back, confusion crossing her face as she saw him stepping out of the elevator. Mr. Cole, is everything— Your interview, he interrupted. I'm conducting it. Her eyes went wide. What? You need 5 minutes to compose yourself? He checked his watch, a gesture more automatic than necessary. The conference room at the end of the hall. I'll meet you there. But you can't. She was stammering, struggling to process what was happening. You're the CEO. You don't interview administrative assistants. Today I do. He straightened his jacket, already moving toward the conference room, then stopped and looked back at her. And Maya, come as you are. No performance. No lies about credentials you don't have. Just tell me the truth. He walked away, leaving her standing in the hallway, folder clutched to her chest, looking like she'd just witnessed something impossible. Maybe she had. Maybe they both had. Maya stood frozen in the hallway, watching Ethan Cole's back as he disappeared around the corner toward the conference room. Her mind struggled to process what had just happened. The CEO of Cole Industries, the man whose company employed over 5,000 people, whose decisions moved markets, whose time was measured in millions of dollars per hour, had just told her he was conducting her interview personally. It was impossible. It was happening. Her hands trembled as she looked down at her folder, at the cheap manila paper that suddenly felt absurdly inadequate. Inside was her resume, printed on regular copy paper because the good resume paper cost $8 more and she couldn't justify the expense. A list of references from retail managers and former professors who probably barely remembered her. A cover letter she'd rewritten 17 times, trying to sound professional without sounding desperate. None of it mattered now. He'd said to come as she was, to tell the truth, no performance. The problem was Maya had spent so long performing, crafting the version of herself that might be employable, might be acceptable, might be enough, that she wasn't entirely sure what the truth looked like anymore. She caught her reflection in the glass door of a nearby office. Her hair was a mess from the sprint to catch the elevator and the stress of being trapped. Her blouse had wrinkled where she'd been sitting against the elevator wall. She looked exactly like what she was, exhausted, overwhelmed, barely holding it together. Come as you are. Maya took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the conference room. The door was open. Ethan sat at the head of a long table, his posture somehow both relaxed and commanding. The room itself was everything she'd expected from a Fortune 500 company. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, leather chairs that probably cost more than her monthly rent, a presentation screen that covered most of one wall. The morning light streamed through the windows, making everything look sharp and expensive. She felt like a smudge on a clean page. Come in, Ethan said, gesturing to the chair beside him rather than across the table. Close the door. Maya did as instructed, her footsteps too loud on the polished floor. She sat, placing her folder on the table with hands that still hadn't stopped shaking. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan was watching her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. In the elevator, In the dimness and the shared vulnerability of being trapped, he'd seemed almost human. Here, in his element, surrounded by the trappings of his power, he was something else entirely. "You're nervous," he observed. "Of course I'm nervous." The words came out sharper than she intended. "You're Ethan Cole. And an hour ago, I was just the guy stuck in an elevator with you." He leaned back in his chair. "What changed?" "Context." Maya gestured around the room. "This, all of this, in the elevator we were just two people. Here, you're she struggled for the right word. "You're everything I'm not." "Which is?" "Successful, powerful, someone who matters." She said it without self-pity, just stating facts. "I'm someone who's grateful for the chance to answer phones and file paperwork." Ethan's expression shifted, something that might have been pain crossing his features. "Is that really what you think this job is?" "Isn't it?" Maya pulled out her resume, sliding it across the table. "Administrative assistant, $42,000 a year. Support the finance department with clerical duties. It's right there in the job posting." He glanced at the resume but didn't pick it up. "Tell me something that's not on that paper." "What do you want to know?" "Anything. Everything." Ethan stood, moving to the windows, his back to her. "You spent an hour telling me your life story in an elevator. Now you're giving me the corporate version. Sanitized, safe, forgettable. I'm asking for the real one." Maya felt something crack inside her, the careful wall she'd built between survival and honesty. "You want the real version? Fine. I'm 25 years old and I feel 50. I wake up every morning at 5:30 because that's when my brother needs breakfast before school, and I work until midnight most nights because one job isn't enough to cover rent and food and his school fees. I haven't bought new clothes in 2 years. I eat ramen 3 nights a week so he can have real food. I'm constantly one emergency away from losing everything." She stood up, pacing to the opposite side of the room because sitting still felt impossible. "I applied to Cole Industries 3 times because I'm desperate, not because I have some burning passion for corporate finance. I need health insurance because I haven't seen a doctor in 18 months and I'm pretty sure that pain in my side is something I should get checked. I need stability because my brother deserves better than watching me fall apart trying to hold our lives together." The words kept coming, unstoppable now. "And the truth is, I'm terrified. Terrified that this interview is some kind of cosmic joke. Terrified that you're going to realize I'm not special or talented or anything except stubborn. Terrified that even if you give me this job, I'll mess it up somehow, because that's what always happens. I get close, so close, and then something goes wrong and I'm back to square one." She stopped, breathing hard, realizing she'd just said everything she wasn't supposed to say in a job interview. Every rule of professional conduct she'd learned had just evaporated in a flood of honest desperation. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "You asked for the truth. That's it. I'm a mess. But I'm a hard-working mess, and I show up, and I don't quit even when everything falls apart. That's all I've got." The silence that followed felt eternal. Maya couldn't bring herself to look at Ethan, couldn't bear to see disappointment or pity or whatever expression he was wearing. She'd blown it. Completely, spectacularly blown it. "My wife left me 18 months ago." Maya's head snapped up. Ethan was still facing the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "She said I was married to my work. Said our daughter would grow up not knowing me because I was always here, always in meetings, always choosing the company over everything else." His voice was quiet, controlled, but Maya could hear the edge of pain beneath it. She was right. "I missed Sophie's first words because I was in Tokyo closing a deal. Missed her first day of kindergarten because of a board meeting I couldn't reschedule. Missed 1,000 small moments that you don't get back." He turned to face her. "My daughter has nightmares. Did you know that? She wakes up crying because she dreams her mother is leaving again, or that I'm leaving, or that she's alone. And the worst part is, I don't know how to fix it. I can run a company with 5,000 employees. I can negotiate billion-dollar deals, but I can't figure out how to make my 7-year-old feel safe." Maya felt her throat tighten. This wasn't the billionaire CEO anymore. This was just a father, as lost as she was, as scared. "So when you talk about being terrified," Ethan continued, "about feeling like you're one mistake away from everything falling apart, I understand that. Different circumstances, but the same fear, the same exhaustion. He moved back to the table, sitting down again. The difference is, you don't have a choice. You have to keep fighting because your brother depends on you. I do have a choice. And most days, I choose the easy thing, work I can control, over the hard thing, which is being present for the one person who needs me most. Maya sat down slowly, her anger and defensiveness draining away. Why are you telling me this? Because an hour ago, you said something that I can't stop thinking about. Ethan picked up her resume, finally looking at it. You said the company feels impersonal, like a machine. And you were right. I built that machine and I'm proud of its efficiency, but somewhere along the way I forgot what it was for. I forgot that businesses are made of people, not just processes. He set the resume down. Your application was rejected twice by an automated system. A computer algorithm decided you weren't qualified without a human ever seeing your resume, without anyone knowing that you're putting yourself through hell to give your brother a better life, without understanding that the person who can maintain that level of commitment and resilience is exactly the kind of person any company should want. You can't hire everyone with a sad story, Maya said. That's not how businesses work. No, but I can stop filtering people out based solely on credentials and pedigree. Ethan leaned forward. Do you know what I learned from our conversation in the elevator? You're observant. You noticed details about my daughter from rabbit fur on my sleeve. You're analytical. You assessed my wealth and position from my watch and suit within minutes. You're empathetic. You understood what I was really asking even when I couldn't articulate it properly. Those are skills, real skills, but none of them show up on a resume. Those are just survival skills, Maya protested. Reading people, figuring out what they want. That's what you learn when you're broke and desperate. Exactly. You've been trained by necessity in ways that no business school could teach. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm not offering you the administrative assistant position. Maya's heart sank. Of course, she'd been stupid to hope. I understand. I'm offering you something else. Ethan looked up from his phone. We're expanding the client services division, creating a new position focused on relationship management, understanding what clients actually need versus what they say they need, translating between technical teams and real-world applications, making sure nothing falls through the cracks. Mr. Cole, it pays $65,000 a year, full benefits, including health insurance that covers dependents. Your brother would qualify. And before you say you're not qualified, let me be clear. No one is qualified because the position doesn't exist yet. I'm creating it. The question is whether you want it. Maya stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. $65,000. That was more than she'd made in her best year by almost double. Health insurance for her brother, who still used the same inhaler from 6 months ago, even though it was probably expired. A position that didn't exist, created for her. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. This morning I promised my daughter I'd be home for dinner. It was a lie when I said it, and we both knew it. I had the Tecton merger presentation this afternoon, the biggest deal of the year, probably the biggest of my career. Nothing was going to make me miss that meeting. He glanced at his watch. It starts in 5 hours. I should be preparing right now, reviewing presentations, strategizing with my team. Instead, I'm here. And I'm realizing that this conversation, this moment, is more important than any merger. That doesn't make sense, Maya said. The merger affects thousands of people, jobs, futures, everything. I'm just one person. You're not just one person. You're a symptom of a larger problem. Ethan stood, walking to the presentation screen. He pulled up a document, financial projections, employee retention rates, customer satisfaction scores. Look at these numbers. Revenue is up. Stock price is climbing. By every metric that matters to shareholders, Cole Industries is thriving. He scrolled to another page. Now look at these. Employee engagement scores have dropped every quarter for 2 years. Customer complaints about impersonal service are increasing. Our best people are leaving for smaller companies that pay less but feel more meaningful. The machine is working, but the people inside it are dying. Maya studied the charts, seeing patterns that probably weren't visible to most. You're succeeding financially but failing humanly. Exactly. Ethan closed the presentation. And I didn't see it until you pointed it out. Or maybe I saw it and didn't want to acknowledge it, because changing course is hard and staying efficient is easy. So hiring me is what? A symbolic gesture? Maya couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. Proof that you care about the little people? No. The word came out sharp. Hiring you is the first step in rebuilding this company into something that actually matters. Something with a face, as you put it. And I need someone who understands what it's like on the other side of the algorithm, who knows what it feels like to be filtered out and dismissed and treated like you're replaceable. He moved back to the table, sitting down again, and for the first time since they'd entered the conference room, he looked uncertain. I'm offering you a real position with real responsibilities.